We're still riding the Timberwolves high, and we turn the page to the Mavericks series on the Minnesota Basketball Party.
This is Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Timberwolves talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Basketball Party on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? It's Wolves Talk every Wednesday here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. It's the Minnesota Basketball Party Timberwolves analysis with a panel of experts. Maybe our most anticipated show for me in a long, long time. We're going to relive the Timberwolves Game 7 drama against the Denver Nuggets with a come-from-behind win, a 30-point swing. Jack Borman and I celebrated on the postcast right after it happened. But I think everyone in town just wants to keep talking about it because this was maybe the greatest moment in Timberwolves history. We will, of course, preview Game 1 tonight, Timberwolves and Mavericks, and whose legacy has taken the biggest bump on the Timberwolves in light of this win against Denver. We'll talk about that as well. It's on a show that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We're so glad that you're watching us live on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or hear our audio on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. Ben Beecken producing high-level daily analysis there with the Locked On Wolves podcast. Let's meet our panel of experts with our opening tip.
What's up, Reggie Wilson, Carol 11 sports director. And, I've been wrapping my mind around what these matchups are going to look like. I'm going to ask the guys who stacks up against who in this series.
I'm Jack Borman, editor-in-chief at Canis Hoopus and co-host of the Locked On Wolves postcast with my man Luke Inman. If he ever gets back from Italy, he'll rejoin me. But and I'll explain why, despite stars taking center stage in this series, I think this series is going to be decided by the others, and we'll find out why.
And I'm Ron Johnson, former Gopher wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer. And I talked to another Gopher star, and Jim Peterson, voice of the Timberwolves. And I interviewed him on the Ron Johnson show. I'm going to explain why I like his take, because Reggie asked this question, why I like Jim Pete's take on who matches up with who better. Also, I'm going to talk about why I'm glad we have Mike Conley and not Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah. Thought for a moment that we might have a Pacers upset in that series last night, and now I don't think that's going to happen. I think
97% chance at 10 seconds for the Pacers to win. Just
inbound the ball.
Goodness. You know who else had a 97% chance to win in the second half?
Ooh, fair. Let's start there. Thank you for the segue, Jack Borman. Timberwolves storm back from 20 down to 10 up and an eventual 8-point win in Game 7, a historic win on many levels. Reggie Wilson was in the building. We'll give him the first crack at it. What's been lingering in your mind, Reggie, off of that game less than 72 hours ago? What's stuck with you since then?
I still can't believe what I watched. I still can't believe it. I pretty much put it, I pulled a Jack Borman, time of death. I thought it was over. I thought they were cooked. They just were out of sorts. I thought it was interesting how Ant was getting trapped in some games and he wasn't getting trapped in the others. And they were like, okay, we are not going to let Ant beat us tonight. And so they were trapping him every time he got the ball. They were double teaming him and he had to get rid of it. And then it just kind of seemed like Ant wasn't really in the game much. It didn't seem like he was energized. And then the second half happened. And, once they went up 20, I was just like, well, okay. I started trying to write some stuff, get myself ready for the news and, put my slant on it and all that. And then all of a sudden they went on that 15-1 run. And I'm just like, oh, snaps. Okay, we're going to go down to the wire here. And then they just kept going. And it was just like, oh, they're about to win this thing. And it seems like the Nuggets could not miss in that first half, especially Jamal Murray. And Chris Finch made the adjustments, put Ant on Murray. It was clamp season. Ant was all in the locker, not in the locker room, but in the tunnel, in the hallways of Ball Arena. I locked him up. and
Handcuffs.
that was the difference in that run. And so it was crazy to just see all of that come together. And for a team that really couldn't miss early on, and the Wolves scored like 38 points in the first half, how in the world did the Nuggets only get to 90 points? I mean, just totally turned it around. And also, I said in game 6, if Jaden McDaniels would get 15 points at least, like the Wolves win that game. And with Ant struggling and Ant not really in it much of the first half, Jaden McDaniels puts in another signature performance. And also, you can't say enough about what Cat did, because he literally kept them afloat in that first half. So incredible performance. I think one thing that came to me, a lot of people were like, hey, this is not the same old Timberwolves. And I think the problem is these Minnesota sports fans have been so scorned. Like, they're so used to heartbreaking and just like getting like their hearts broken, that I don't think that was something that they could even fathom, especially when they went down 20. And so this team is showing, regardless of what happens in this Mavs series, this team is not the same Timberwolves. And it was hilarious because, Vincent Goodwill was like, hey, you all didn't lose big. And, that whole viral moment of Cat and
Oh
Ant,
yeah.
we've been losing for 20 years. How much more we got to lose? Like, it was just a funny moment, because it was just like, yeah, they have been losing for a long time, but now this team is different, man. This is not the same team that lost the 2 20-point leads in the series against the Grizzlies. Like, Finchie has grown, the team has grown. Getting Mike Conley was a very important piece for this team's evolution, as Ron probably will get to. And it shows, man, that was one of the best games that I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and one of the craziest stats of a game full of crazy stats, you mentioned Jaden, first time scoring back-to-back 20-point games in his career, and he saves it for game 6 and game 7 of the Western semis. Jack,
And
yeah.
Sam, the craziest stat too that we just kept like coming back to was we were told at halftime, it was like the Wolves being optimistic, that they're 7-1 when Ant scores 5 or less points in the first half, including the regular season. And he had 5 points in that first half, finished with 16, and they won. 8-1 now when Ant scores 5 or less points in the first half. Crazy.
Yeah, and I think they're like 8-1 all season with Scott Foster too. We gotta embrace Scott Foster. He's our man. We love Scott Foster. Jack, what's been sticking with you?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just how emblematic that game was of what we've seen from the Timberwolves all season long. In that, when you look back throughout the course of the season, and I don't know if you kind of have a name for every game, there's probably been 3 or 4 Nickeil Alexander-Walker games, or 3 or 4 Naz Reid or Jaden McDaniels or Rudy Gobert or Mike Conley games, where it feels like one player really had a 4 or 5 minute stretch where they totally stepped up and changed the complexion of the game from a close loss to a close win, or a close win to a comfortable win, or just a solid win to a leave no doubt win. And I just thought what Naz Reid did in that fourth quarter was so representative of what you want a sixth man of the year to be, in that it was fitting because there were bookend Naz Reid fourth quarters in this series. He scores 14 in the fourth quarter of game 1, scores or assists on more than half of the team's fourth quarter points in game 1, and then comes in when Karl Anthony Towns picks up his 5th foul with I want to say around six minutes left. And from there on in, he was incredible. We can just kind of go down the line. At 5:02, he scores a tough layup going right to go up 5. At 4:10, he rebounds Ant's miss, gets fouled, makes both to go up 5 again. Next trip down, he blocks Jokic's shot. Then on the other end of the floor, has that crazy putback dunk from the corner to go up 7. Then next possession, assists on Ant made 3 to go up 10. I mean, he scored or assisted on 11 straight points during the run that helped the Timberwolves win the game. And that all came after Karl Anthony Towns really did all the legwork of putting the Timberwolves to be in that position with a close game for someone else to step up and kind of run with it and take the game. And it's just been so fun to watch this Timberwolves team have each other's back all season long. It doesn't matter who the player is. It doesn't matter what moment of the game it is. It feels like there's always just kind of like this whack-a-mole of other teams having to pop up and put out, these fires that role players and stars alike have started all season long. And I just think the way that, this team celebrates each other and celebrates those moments and breathes confidence into one another plays such a huge role in all these guys being ready to step in and make a big impact at any point of the game, no matter what the time and score is or how much they've played in the game up until that point. So I thought that was really cool, and was really, really happy for Naz that he got to have a moment like that in this series, because, even though we had that, he had a somewhat similar moment in game one, it wasn't necessarily his best series in those middle 5 games. But it was really fun for him to be able to kind of remind everybody how valuable he's been to this team all year, and just kind of show why this fan base has such a strong love affair with him.
And make sure you go check out Ron Johnson's interview with Jim Peterson on the Ron Johnson Show yesterday. Ron, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite moment was just when you look at 2 series. One, the Rudy Gobert foul. The only reason it was my favorite was because you could see the team kind of rally around and say, okay, this is definitely about to be some BS. We got to ratchet this up a little bit and start playing harder. And they all kind of understood the assignment of like, all right, if Rudy's out, or if Cat, because Cat had 5 fouls too. If one of these guys go out, Naz, we need you. We need you to come in and do something. We need Jaden McDaniels. We need you to carry this now. Anthony Edwards, we know what you've been doing, but you've turned it on and turned the defense on. In the second half, his defense is what propelled this team, because he wasn't scoring. He wasn't filling the basket up. He wasn't the greatest player on the floor. He said, you know what? I can get this a different way. And he started doing that. And then he started hunting his shot. He started figuring it out. He started getting to the basket. But my favorite was, one, the Karl Anthony Towns put back dunk. I think that one surprised himself of how high he got. 2, how athletic it looked. Like normally it looks kind of like weird. And Jim Pete gave a great explanation to Cat. Like he's a big man that can shoot, so he probably feels like he looks like Steph Curry when he actually looks like himself, and he tries to fit through small holes. He tries to do things with his body that he can't. And then the wave, like the Anthony Edwards wave, for me, I loved it. And then the Jaden McDaniels and one mixtape he was about to put on KCP, I love it because it's not that we're your friends and we're sorry we had to beat you. It's screw you. Y'all was talking all this crap. We were down 3-2. Deal with it at home. Your fans can go home crying. Good night. Drive home safe. And we're going to fly back to Minnesota. I love that for that team because, 1, that's petty. But 2, that shows that he has that Michael Jordan, I don't really care about you, that AAU, we're best friends. He doesn't have that. Like, he shows that he's a hooper. He shows up to the games in sweatsuits. He's not trying to go to the Met Gala. He's not out there trying to post on IG and hang out with people and be seen at these parties. He is a hooper. He's showing up every day ready to hoop, and I love that. But that moment of him and Jay McDaniels kind of being really petty at the end of the game, I'm all for it. Now you have to back it up, though, because if you do something dumb and you slip up, Dallas is definitely going to make you pay for that. And that's that whole like Caitlin Clark wave off when she did that to South Carolina. She couldn't back it up later against LSU. And so they made her pay for it. That's what happens. WNBA, and she wasn't talking. I'll give her that. But the WNBA is making her pay for everybody else is saying like, Caitlin Clark's going to come in and just breeze through the NBA. So when you do stuff like that, when you do an and one mixtape at the end of the game, you got to back it up the next game because that other team watched that too. And they're like, oh, give us a chance. And I promise you, because Luka, his boy is Jokic. So let's not forget. Like, he's probably mad that he has to go play with his horses now. He's like, let me get you guys back for my friend. Serbia, I'm coming for you. And so I'm excited about this series.
I think the stretch that's been alluded to, the Naz dunk, Conley steal, and Edwards 3, that was like a spiritual moment for Wolves fans, because at that point you put your arms in the air and you say, we got it. We did it.
Rudy
like
too.
And I've got a graphic to back that up too, actually, the Rudy shot. One of my favorite subplots of the barrage that the Wolves had in the second half was A-Rod at the bottom of the screen, sitting courtside, freaking out with every made basket. You had Laurie on the baseline, so they didn't sit together, but they were kind of like egging each other on. It was great. The reactions were fantastic throughout, particularly on the Rudy fadeaway jumper. I have for those on YouTube, this is his shot chart for the season. There are 5 green dots representing made baskets outside the paint. 5 the entire year made outside the paint, including that shot that put the Wolves up by 4, which was such a momentum builder. And everything Rudy was putting up was going in. Free throws, right? Like that running layup he had. And that jumper over Jokic. Insane. It was the Wolves' night. And I couldn't believe just the tidal wave of momentum. Like some people say momentum doesn't exist. It has to exist. I watched it. Like in its most visceral form in that game. Incredible the amount of shots that went in from so many different people in that second half charge. We're going to talk about go ahead, Reg.
The funny part about that too was it was a stark difference from the first half. If you remember, like early on in that game, they were running offense through Rudy and Nah. And it was just like, okay, what's going on here? Like Rudy was taking all these shots early and he was missing them, and he was kind of missing them bad. And then Nah was taking shots and he wasn't necessarily making them. Jaden wasn't making them early on, and it was a weird game. It was just like, okay, what's going on? Why are they running the offense through these guys? And then it just totally flipped in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't even get a shot off, it seemed like, in the first half. They were running the shot clock down. It was kind of like the Nuggets looked in game 2 a little bit. But we're going to get into the Mavs series, of course, also talk a little legacy. Whose legacy increased the most thanks to that win? That's coming up next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. It's brought to you by Game Time, and now an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. I've checked it out. You can get in the door for Game 1 for $242. You know, my favorite movie, Christmas time, It's a Wonderful Life. Where am I going with this? There's a great line. It's a Wonderful Life. There's a run on the bank, and one of the old guys goes, $242 isn't going to break anybody. Well, that's the deal here. You can get on Game Time for $242. You can get into Timberwolves Mavs tonight, Game 1, and you can watch that price go down the closer it gets to Game Time, I would suspect, because that's how they roll at Game Time. Great last-minute deals. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. All-in pricing, no hidden fees, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. So if you find better ones, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. LOCKEDONNBA. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, glad you're with us. Minnesota Basketball Party, Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please subscribe, and thank you for watching and listening here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Legacy talk. Ron Johnson, I want you to kick us off here. So of the major players for the Timberwolves here, who do you think got the biggest lift from a career legacy standpoint? I think we got a few nominees, but I want to hear from you who you think.
Well, the way everybody's talking about him now, not just offense but defense, I got to go with Jaden McDaniels. You brought it up, the game 6 and 7. To be able to carry a team like that, help out, knowing Anthony Edwards wasn't giving you his best night of performance scoring wise, and then his length, and so Jaden McDaniels just continues to just play his role. And I think Jim Pete brought this up too, like earlier in the series when I think it was him and I think had Jamal Murray becoming a AAU meme, where like actual point guards, like NBA white guys, point guards were posting and joking too, saying this is what it felt like growing up as a white point guard in the AAU circuit in Georgia. Like, it's hilarious that even like other than Jason Williams, like the other guys that actually play the sport can laugh and have fun with that moment, because they had Jamal Murray absolutely like pissed off. He's reaching and trying to hold guys back and he couldn't find them. He's losing the ball. Like, I think that was the start of the confidence to it. Go down 3 games, 6 and 7, he stepped back up. And I think everybody's like, man, this Jake McDaniels kid is like, he's good. And now it's going to be like, man, what is he going to become? And can the Timberwolves keep him? I mean, that's now you get a little bit worried, like, man, this guy's becoming too good. And you don't want him to be seen nationally, because all of a sudden, if I'm the Pistons or I'm the Pacers even, I'm like, hey, maybe that Jay McDaniels kid can come over here and help us out, because we clearly don't know what we're doing. So, yeah, but I think he has made a big leap in his legacy.
Reg.
So I got to go Cat. Yeah. Especially just because like that first half performance and his performance in general just really kept the Wolves in that game, because everything else seemed like it was falling apart, and Cat's just like, oh, I'm just knock this 3 down. Oh, let me just, bully ball my way in for the bucket. And what was nice is like when Cat is aggressive and he's picking his spots, like he can be unguardable at times. And it's really interesting when he kind of tries to put the ball on the floor and just barrel his way into the paint. A lot of times it doesn't work out too well. He might turn the ball over. He might draw a foul and it just kind of kills the possession. But like, he has some very smart basketball plays in that series against the Nuggets, and it really helped the Wolves. But more so than his offense, honestly, his defense. When he was guarding Jokic, you could tell. And I know Ant, it's like, look, when Cat is not fouling, I think he's one of the best defenders in the league. Like, he's been on record saying that. And you know what? I can back Ant up with that. I can agree. A lot of the assignments that he drew were not easy. I did not like when he got switched off onto Murray. It was barbecue chicken all day, because Murray is so crafty with getting shots off, and Cat is just not quick enough to keep up with a guy like Murray, even though sometimes Cat feels like he's a guard. But that was an impressive showing of basketball, because like they made it really tough on Jokic when they put Cat on him. And that was a very important piece of them winning that series. Like, I know everybody wanted to rag on Rudy, and Rudy did the best that he could against Jokic. Jokic is pretty much unguardable. But when Cat was on Jokic, like, it made a difference. And I think that was the difference in them having success in that series and ultimately getting out of that series with the win, moving on.
Jack.
Yeah, I'm going to be yelling at Reggie to stop effing fouling when I see him tonight, in honor of that. But yeah, no, just to add to what Reg said, Carl held Jokic to 59 points on 24 of 55 shooting. It's 43.5%, and 4 of 21 from 3. That's 19%. He also was excellent when he got switched on to Jamal Murray and contested Jamal Murray shots, held Murray to 28 points on 11 of 31 shooting. That's 35.5%. I would also say Carl, but I'll make an argument for Rudy in that, it really truly does feel like Rudy could play 3 or 4 awesome games in a row. And then the second he does anything wrong, everyone just has the pitchforks ready to go to just tear him down for whatever reason. And I just think it's really unfortunate, because Rudy Gobert, while yes, I totally understand that he played pretty poorly in the first half of this game, of Game 7, he was tremendous in the second half. In the third quarter, he did an awesome job of sealing smaller defenders inside to draw 3 fouls in a row, which was important, getting the Wolves in the bonus for the last 8 minutes of the third quarter. And in my opinion, really softened up the Nuggets defense. They didn't want to foul because they didn't want to put guys on the free throw line, which was really important in kind of helping unlock the offense a little bit. And then in the fourth quarter, 4 of 5 from the free throw line, hit that turnaround shot, and was really important in kind of setting the tone early in that quarter with some pick and roll that kind of helped get the Wolves some easy baskets and kind of helped keep their foot on the gas, which was really important. And then he continued to play excellent defense on the other end of the floor like he had the whole entire game. And I just think Rudy is a guy who you're so used to seeing kind of all of his dirty work things you don't really pop on the screen. But if you were to take them away in those moments, they would shine so bright in a bad way, obviously, just because you don't have that guy there to clean up all the messes. And it's really cool that he's finally starting to get some shine for what he's doing. I mean, Rudy Gobert is playing in a conference finals, before Joel Embiid. So is Karl Anthony Towns. And, everybody worships at the altar of these guys. And it just kind of goes to show what can happen when, you just play really hard, you play your role and you buy in and you don't make excuses. You just put your head down and you keep working and you, continually leave it all out there every single night and set a culture of winning and excellence and playing hard every single time down the floor. And that's what these guys do. And I think Rudy Gobert has a ton to do with that and deserves all the credit in the world. So I think it's really cool that Rudy's starting to see some shine, and hopefully that'll continue in the Western Conference Finals in a matchup that I think is much more naturally suited for him going up against another, rolling rim running five in Derek Lively.
Yeah, I definitely think that Rudy avoided the angry mob by doing what he did in the fourth quarter, hitting a couple big shots, playing great defense, being active. Like, I think that there was a lot at stake for Rudy. And a lot of this, unfortunately, is Barkley and Draymond Green fueled. Like, the national audience is getting a very, very subjective opinion on Rudy from the guys that are the opinion leaders in the space. So the pitchforks, like you said, Jack, they were coming for Rudy. He had the most to lose if the Timberwolves lost this series. So I think the answer is Rudy, because he now, the perception gap is so different for him because of the win versus the loss. But I do want to give flowers to Karl Anthony Towns, who has been just perfectly, like, except for the Mother's Day game, so efficient in the playoffs. He's averaging 19, 9, and 3, 52% from the field, 44% from three, 83% from the line. I mean, you take that any game in the playoffs.
And he's got a really positive assist to turnover ratio, Sam, which is really important. I don't think he had a single series of having an assist to turnover ratio north of 1 before the playoffs this year. Maybe that Houston series he did, but he's done it now in each of the 2 series, which has been huge.
Yeah, he's not that far off from being 2-1 in that regard. That's actually a pretty good stat, Jack. Just doing a quick filter on his previous playoff series. He was 3.6 turnovers per game to 2.1 assists per game. So really 2-1 the wrong way, in essence there. That's a really good stat. Let's do all Mavericks talk when we come back. What are the key matchups? Who guards Luka? Who guards Kyrie? Where does Mike Conley fit in all of this? That's coming up next on the Minnesota Basketball Party. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Life can be stressful. A lot of stressors, big, small. We carry them around. They build up. We bottle them up, and that can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest, figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down, big or small. You want to learn those positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, how to empower yourself, whatever it might be. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make sure that match is right for you. So get it off your chest, whatever it is, with BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Wolves Mavs beginning tonight, 7:30 Central, Target Center. Wolves favored by 4. Let's start this time with Jack Borman. Matchups to watch. There's been a lot of talk already about Ant on Kyrie, because he declared it after the Game 7 in the TNT interview. Presumably Jaden on Luka. But I'd like to hear from you, Jack. What intrigues you most about these matchups, or do you think that they'll stick with those matchups as we assume they will?
Yeah, I wrote in my preview article at Candace that went up last night that I actually would pull what the Wolves did in the first series against the Phoenix Suns. I would put Mike Conley on Kyrie. I would put Ant on Luka. I'd put Jaden McDaniels on PJ Washington. Kind of like what they did a little bit in the last series, where where you had Jaden on Michael Porter Jr. to try to take away that third option, and then kind of have Ant on the primary ball handler, and then obviously you try to take away Jokic that way. But I honestly think that if you can play kind of similarly to the way the Wolves did in the first series with Cat on Kevin Durant, where you're kind of okay with Kevin Durant getting his, in this case it being Kyrie Irving, at the expense of Luka Doncic not having the ball in his hands as much and not impacting the game quite as much as a playmaker, so that he can fling the ball all around the floor, create all these open three-point shots for his teammates. I think that's something that could be interesting, because the Mavericks are not used to playing through Kyrie as a primary number one go-to scorer. They haven't really done it at all in the postseason. And it could be something to keep an eye on there that's interesting. But I think that they'll probably align with Jaden on Luka and Anton Kyrie and Mike on Derek Jones Jr. is what I would imagine. And then Karl Anthony Towns on Washington, and Rudy on Daniel Gafford, since he starts, even though Lively will close and play more minutes. But a couple other things that I'm keeping an eye on here is Derek Jones Jr. is going to guard Anthony Edwards. In 4 matchups this season, he held Ant to 30 points on 10 of 31 shooting. That's 32%. And then the Mavericks are going to hide Luka on Jaden and likely Kyrie Irving on Mike Conley. So both of those guys are going to be playing in the corners. And that's really important, because Dallas prefers to play a drop with Derek Lively out there and with Gafford out there. Gafford will sometimes play close to the level of the screen, but it's going to be harder for Dallas to load up and play in the gaps and have, a second guy ready to help Ant in pick and roll, because the guys that we saw stepping out of the corners for Denver in the last series were Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr., guys who are, 6'9", 6'10", really long. Gordon's a really physical guy, can help kind of stop straight line drives, but those two guys are going to offer minimal resistance as help defenders on the drive with Ant. And so there's a lot of pressure on Derek Jones Jr. to keep Ant out of the paint on his own. And while he's 6'6", has a 6'10" wingspan, is really quick, moving side to side, is very agile. I just struggle to see him doing that over the course of, consistently over the course of a series. And that's not his fault. I mean, we're talking about Anthony Edwards here. It's not an easy thing to do. And so, I think if you can continually pick on those two guys as low men in the corners, I think that's something that's going to be really interesting. And then, Karl Anthony Towns scored 62 points the last time that he faced against PJ Washington, when Washington was a member of the Charlotte Hornets. So that's also something to keep an eye on. And I've got one more for you if I have time here, Sam, with wide open threes. So Dallas is shooting 418 threes in the playoffs this year. About almost half of them have been wide open threes. So the nearest defender is 6 feet or more away. They shoot 41.5% on those threes. On any other type of three-pointer, so if a defender is even remotely close to the shooter, they shoot 32.3% on those threes. So being able to close out, forcing Dallas to play below the three-point line where the length becomes more of a factor. Dallas is going to turn it over if they play below the three-point line. So those are some things that are going to be really important.
Yeah, really good scouting report there. Ron, what are you watching for matchup-wise?
Well, the thing is, the Timberwolves haven't seen a lot of Kyrie and Luka together. I mean, if you remember, Kyrie didn't play much, and then Luka was out some of the games. I think the one time they played together was the one time they won, and they're 3-1. Jim Peterson brought that up too, saying that when you watch them play, it's what I think the lively. And then also when you think about their other big, I forgot his name already, but bringing him in as well, when him and Lively switch off, they don't really play together much. And I think that's something new we might see because of Rudy and Cat, is they have to find a way to match the Timberwolves' length. I'm not so much worried about the Timberwolves. I think the Mavs have a harder time dealing with the Timberwolves. When you think about Naz Reid, because I think Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know if it was a quote or a meme or what, but they were saying like the league can't play with this many bigs. And then it's a picture like Cat, Naz Reid, and Rudy Gobert. And they're saying, yeah, but look at us, we're doing it. So I think that there's going to be, like, when you think about Chris Finch and what he can possibly do, you got to throw things at them they haven't seen. This is the playoff time where you try different lineups, not get too far out of what you do, but you got to try different things to see how it works. I would go Naz Reid, Cat, and Rudy and just see what the Mavs do. Like, if you can get switches where Kyrie has ended up on one of the bigs because you have so many out there, you can set picks with everybody. You're now able to play your type of ball, and Kyrie doesn't want to give you resistance in the post. And I think that's going to be the difference too. If Kyrie ends up on Anthony Edwards, he can't handle him in the post. Kyrie's going to want to stay on Mike Conley as much as possible. But if they were to get him out of there and say, Ant, for now, you're the point guard, let's just see what happens. Kyrie now has to decide. I think Jaden McDaniels should be on Luka as well as Naz Reid. I think Naz Reid moves well. He has the length to kind of get him out of his game. He doesn't want to move fast. So if you can speed him up as well, getting the ball out of his hand. The one person you don't want to speed up and play that game was Kyrie. Kyrie will cook anybody one-on-one. So you let Kyrie kind of do his thing and you keep him at arm's length and then wait for him to make that move. But Luka's the one, if you speed him up, you might get him out of his game, and then he's looking over to the rest for fouls. Other than that, their bigs do hustle. They do get rebounds. PJ Washington is a sniper. And so that's the kind of, like, PJ Washington. Is it Naz Reid on PJ Washington? Is Karl-Anthony Towns going to be on him a little bit? Like, you can move guys around as well to keep a hand in his face at least. But for Cat, the one thing I'm watching with Cat, don't make dumb fouls at the top of the key, and definitely not within the first 5 seconds of a game. Like, he has to just calm down. He's at home. He's going to have the home energy. So I don't know if they need to give him like a Valium or something, like something to just relax him. He's got to play within his game. And I hope you don't see a Karl-Anthony Towns foul until the second quarter. If you do that, maybe you have him under control. But I will say this too. The Wolves are deeper. Like, there's a bunch of national media people talking about this now behind me, but the Wolves are deeper. If Kyrie goes out, I don't know if the Mavs have a chance. If Luka has to go out with a calf or something, or legs not feeling right, I don't know if they have a chance. When Karl-Anthony Towns went out, the Timberwolves are still good. And I think that's the difference in these two teams. If you can get these stars off the floor for the Mavs, the Wolves are fine if their stars have to take a sit for a little bit, whether it's Rudy, Carl, or even Anthony Edwards for a little bit, because we know Jaden McDaniels can pick up the slack.
Yeah, interestingly, Dallas has been playing 9 in previous games. They use Hardaway off the bench, Lively, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy. Wolves have been playing like 7 and a couple slow-mo minutes.
Hardy really took over as the 8th man in games 5 and 6 of that series. So I'd be a little surprised if we saw more than 5 minutes a night of Tim Hardaway. But yeah, I mean, Dallas is, I think they have the 4th bench players for Dallas represent the 4th highest share of their total minutes of any team in the playoffs, where Wolves are like right in the middle.
Yeah, and I wonder if Dallas goes deeper on the bench, I wonder if that affords Minnesota the luxury of using more slow-mo, because they won't have to match up with the stars quite as frequently as they had to in Denver, where it was like you got to load up when Jokic is out there. But yeah, I'll be watching the depth for sure. I'll be watching, like, if Conley ends up on Derrick Jones Jr., that's a big size mismatch too. I wonder how that's going to go. But Reggie, let's get your take. Matchup that you are captivated by.
Yeah, it is interesting, and that was kind of what I was kind of alluding to in the tease. Like, this is not like a very I don't know. I feel like you can see the matchups better when they play Denver than when they play the Mavs. Like, it's, yesterday they were talking a whole lot about how, this is a different team. They last played them on January 31st. That was before the trade deadline. And now you're like, okay, well, they've added, guys like PJ Washington, and like they don't have Kleber, and a lot of people were thinking like maybe Kleber being out might be a tough thing for them. But it's interesting because, like, it's not like a traditional, like Jack was talking about, like maybe Conley being on Derrick Jones Jr. That's not necessarily an easier type of a matchup. Like, it's just kind of weird. Like, Cat being on PJ Washington, like that's kind of a weird matchup, but it's just kind of like they are who they are, and you got the guys that you have, so you just kind of have to match up the way that you can. Gafford and Rudy, that's pretty much a clean one there, but it is just kind of interesting. I am interested to see, because there was times, especially in the last few games against the Nuggets, that Jaden McDaniels got into quite a bit of foul trouble guarding Jamal Murray. And I know that Luka is huge on drawing fouls and really trying to get to the line. And, you just wonder if he's going to bait Jaden McDaniels into some foul calls. And we've seen Jaden McDaniels get really frustrated by some of the fouls that he's drawn. And I could see Luka, really making it tough on Jaden and really getting him frustrated with just how his game is. Chris Finch yesterday talked about how when Luka has the ball in his hands, he has this ability to just slow the whole arena down. And that's pretty much what Luka does. And it seems like, oh no, like you should be able to guard him well, but he's just so crafty. It's like they graduated from Joker to Luka. So I'm interested to see, what matchup. Is it going to be Jaden on Luka? And then, like, if Luka kind of starts to cook a little bit against Jaden, like, do they switch it up and put Jaden on maybe Kyrie or put Jaden on PJ Washington, and then maybe Ant guards Luka? I'm really interested to see how that goes. And then I'm interested to see who they put on Ant and the success that they have with him. The Nuggets found something when they were trapping Ant. I do wonder if the Mavs maybe tried to put that same strategy into place and maybe try to make some of the others beat them. But it's going to be a very interesting series because I don't feel like they match up as evenly as they did with the Nuggets. And I think that's going to be one of the challenging things for both teams to try to figure it out.
Yep. And as Richard says in the comments, that cuts both ways. So the Mavericks might be head scratching as well about how the matchups work. Timberwolves might be having to put the puzzle together. And as we saw in the Nuggets series, it changes game to game. I mean, certain strategies you employ early in the series, you change it in the middle of the series, then you go back to it later in the series. It's not going to be a consistent kind of matchup across the board, all 7 games of that series, which we are now going to predict the final minutes of the show. I not only want your series prediction, but I'd like a specific player prediction or event prediction of something that's going to happen in the series, how someone is going to perform. So a little bit of extra twist on our prediction segment. Let's start with Jack.
Yeah, I have the Timberwolves winning this series in 5 games. I think it's really going to come down to which group of others can score more efficiently. Do you trust Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid to more consistently, 2 of those guys give you 15 points in every game versus PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr., Daniel Gafford, and Derek Lively? Because I sure do. And the numbers from so far in this postseason would bear that out. I mean, Dallas has really leaned into defense when their stars haven't scored quite as well. I just don't think that that's going to work quite as well against Minnesota as it did against Oklahoma City. Not to mention, I think the Wolves have much better options for guarding Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving when you get into crunch time than the Mavericks have to guard Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. And the Wolves also have other options when you consider, Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming off the bench too. And then for a player performance, Karl Anthony Towns has 1 career 30-point game in the playoffs. I think he has multiple in this series. The only 30 ball he had was game 4 of round 1 against Memphis in 2022, but Dallas really does not have a good matchup for him at all. This is where missing Maxi Kleber, as Reggie alluded to, I think is going to be really problematic. I think Karl Anthony Towns is going to be the leading scorer in this series for the Wolves and probably, 2 or 3 games of this series. And I just think you can tell right now, Karl is extremely comfortable in his skin with this group on and off the floor. They really empower him, and they've really shown confidence in playing through him when he's been feeling it and when there's a good matchup for him on the floor, like we saw in Game 7. They continually switched Murray and Brown onto him in the post, and he delivered. So I think that this is going to be another series where Karl Anthony Towns scoring is going to be really important. I think he puts up multiple 30 balls in this series.
Nice. So Wolves in 5 from Jack Borman. How about Ron?
I'm going to go Wolves in 6. I think the Wolves in 6. I just think, I don't know. Last time I said 5 and last time I said 5 and then they just, we all know what happened. But they got it done in 7. So I'm gonna go Wolves in 6. My specific prediction is gonna be Anthony Edwards ascends even higher and people start to really see the Michael Jordan in him. I think he's going to have like 3 big games, but also big time like meme moments, whether it's a dunk on somebody, a putback dunk, a shrug of the shoulders after multiple threes or something. But I feel like now he's starting to really understand it's 4 teams left and it's my show now.
Who would be more fun for him to posterize, Luka or Kyrie?
Neither. I want him to go like lively, like go
over him.
Yeah, go get a big
Definitely.
because Kyrie's not going to stand there, and Luka would be nice, but Luka as well, like he doesn't get off the ground, and we know that. So yeah, go get you a big, go get you somebody where everybody's like, yeah, you're not doing that, and he dunks on, or even Derrick Jones, or Derrick Jones Jr. because he's a jumper too. So like hops on hops. Yeah, like go get you a real poster because I think about like the Michael Jordan Knicks one where they ended up editing somebody out, because John Starks had one and then Jordan had his on Ewing when he kind of did the reverse. Like, go get you a big, go get you a Mutombo. Like, go make history right now.
Reggie, your prediction?
Yeah, I am going to say Wolves in 6 as well. But what's interesting is I feel like the Wolves are kind of gassed, and I wanted to go Ron's way with Anthony Edwards, but he's just going to have such an assignment on both ends of the floor, and I know that he is young and he can do it, but I think for that reason, with how tough the defensive assignments are going to be with Ant, with Jaden. I'm with Jack. I was definitely gonna go Cat all the way. I think Cat is gonna average 25 or more points in this series, and I think that he's gonna be key because he's been aggressive and he's shown that he could go out there and hunt his shots. And I don't see anybody on the Mavs really being able to guard him if he's on his game. And so he's shown that he can go out there and light it up and score his points. And I think that's going to be a very, very important thing for the Wolves in this series is Cat's performance, and I think he's going to meet the moment. I think Cat is making it really hard when this offseason does finally come. What are they going to do with him? With that Supermax kicking in, I think that it's going to be a very interesting offseason. Are they just going to go into that second apron with the luxury tax? Or, did he up his trade value? It's just like, man, as far as they go, like, do you break this team up? Like, you can't do that. Like, they seem to be ascending at the right time. So I think Carl is going to continue to make his money in this series, and I think he's going to be the biggest difference maker.
I've got Wolves in 6 as well, but watch out for tonight. When a team wins the equivalent of their Super Bowl, watch out for the next game. Watch out for the emotional letdown. Tonight worries me. I think the Wolves win in 6, and I think they win one of the games with a buzzer beater. And I think that it's Cat who hits it. That's all for today on the Minnesota Basketball Party. Thanks for watching on Locked On Sports Minnesota, listening on the Locked On Wolves podcast feed. For Reggie, Jack, Ron Johnson, and myself, tune into the postcast as well tonight, instantly after the game ends here at Locked On Sports Minnesota. Appreciate those in the comments section. We will talk to you next week on the Minnesota Basketball Party.